Welcome to Fleetyards, everyone. This is Larry Nemechek, Dr. Trek, fresh from Portal 47. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for, the intrepid crew of Trekyards. Samuel Cockings as Commander Cockings. And now, my fellow Trekyardians, the brave captain of Trekyards Command, Stewart. Foley. Captain Foley, everybody.
Thank you for that awesome introduction. Yes, I am Captain Foley.
And I'm indeed Commander Cockings, and today's episode of Fleetyards takes us into the world of Galaxy Quest, a science fiction comedy movie from 1999. The film was directed by Dean Parsott and written by David Howard, Mark Johnson, and Charles Neurath, and produced by DreamWorks.
Yes, and we will be looking at the NSEA Protector today, commanded by Quincy Taggart.
The NSEA Protector, NTE 3120, is Earth's most powerful interstellar craft. It is an Evolution-class heavy cruiser and serves as the flagship for the NSEA, or the National Space Exploration Administration.
With a crew consisting of around 600 personnel, the Protector is the only known NSEA vessel with a Maktar crew member, who is in fact the last of his race, having survived the genocide of the Tev Mech, that being the one and only Dr. Lazarus.
The ship measures in at 441 meters in length. Now, with all the different sci-fi franchises we'll be looking at for Fleetyards, you don't really get a sense of perspective when watching each show, or each movie compared to each other. So how big really is 441 meters, really? Well, as I always do, let's talk numbers and show some really pretty scale charts, especially for the occasion. And go. So, at 441 meters, the Protector is about the same size as the Excelsior class at 467, the Nebula class at 440 meters, the USS Prometheus at 415, and comparing it to ships from other sci-fi franchises, the Stargate X-304 Daedalus class is 225 meters, Farscape's Talon is 500 meters, the Cloud9 Resort ship from the reimagined BSG is 450 meters, the Charon class frigate from Halo is 490 meters, and if I've got any space left in this chart, the Sulaco from Aliens is 385 meters, and finally the Star Wars Nebulon B escort frigate from Star Wars, as I said, is 300 meters. So what do you think of all those ships in comparison, Stuart? Perspective and all.
That's a lot of ships.
Yes, I looked up through a lot of scales and tried to find, different universes and what would be close, but really that size is a very odd, nebulous size. Most ships are either the Battlestar Galactica battleship size or the much smaller size, so it was difficult to find ones that were relative.
Yeah, well, the ship's a little bit bigger than I actually anticipated it would be, that being said, the crew complement seems kind of small actually for a ship that size, but considering the hull configuration with the main part is mainly engines, so I don't think that's actually living compartments or living space, those wing parts. So with just the center being the living area, I think that 600 actually works out pretty good. So I think it's a good sized ship for sure.
Yeah, but I know when I originally looked at this, I was surprised how big she was. I thought she was closer to a Constitution class rather than an Excelsior. That really blew me away a bit. But there's beautiful renders to see that relative scale next to us. How elegant and maneuverable she is, and yet that huge size. But then again, you watch the film, you take a look at that bridge and some of the really large rooms, and you do get a sense of a larger ship and a really large bridge.
The primary command crew consists of Commander Peter Quincy Taggart, his advisor, Dr. Lazarus, the aforementioned Maktar crew member, computer specialist Tawny Madison, Laredo, the pilot, Tech Sergeant Chen, who is the lead technical expert and engineer, and his protege, Lalaurie, as assistant engineer. And finally, Rock Ingersoll as the security chief.
The best of them all. The ship is equipped with state-of-the-art quantum flux drive and was capable of sustained speeds in excess of Mach 15 and sprint of up to Mach 20 or turbo, although this was only designed to be used for short boosts. She is also the only ship to be equipped with the mysterious Omega-13 device, a device that was capable of reversing time for 13 seconds, which is about the amount of time required to fix a single mistake.
There are three forms of transport to and from the ship for the crew, the first of which are the surface pods, which are basically a form of shuttlecraft. These came equipped with an autopilot feature, and as well as a manual control, of course. These small vessels were powered by a hyper-pulse thruster system.
Cool. Secondly, the digital conveyor, which was a type of teleportation device. Acting much like the transporters from Star Trek, it digitizes a target on a planet, then dices the target into microscopic cubes, and then sends all those pieces to a teleportation chamber aboard the ship, all in a millisecond or less. The conveyor was built to accommodate humans, or at the very least, every member of the ship's very vaguely diverse personnel. Other species that were targeted by a teleporter usually reformed in the chamber, heavily mutated, mangled, defaced, deformed, and butchered.
Nice.
Most notably, a pig lizard that was literally reformed inside out, leaving its body convulsing and spurting out blood and other fluids until it gorily exploded.
And it exploded.
It really did. However, digitizing rock monsters seems to work just fine. Good to note there. This device required a highly skilled operator that had to manually target the life form being digitized and initiate the process. The process was described more as an art than a science.
The third method was interstellar pods. These were used by stepping onto a plate in the embarkation room, and a gel membrane would form over your body to protect you from space and any other anomalies. Once activated, the pod then launches and takes the occupant to a pre-programmed location. The range of these pods is unknown, but with the use of wormholes, or as we see in the film, a black hole, they are a perfect method for transporting personnel to and from a planet without having to get the ship inside the actual system. The Protector had one large embarkation room at the back of the primary hull and at least one receiving room. There, an open porthole protected by a force field allowed pods to enter and receive pods of incoming personnel. At least 7 receiving platforms were available at any specific time, possibly more, but we're actually really not quite sure. While we do not know the exact range, it is far further than the digital conveyor was capable of operating at. The long-range interstellar pods were possibly able to send a person across a large solar system or further very quickly due to an anomaly generator, which created a singularity through which the pod traveled.
The ship was outfitted with a large number of offensive weaponry, including 4 resonance cannon batteries, a complement of Gallet magnets, pulse catapults, and quantum rockets. The primary weapon is a blue particle cannon, which has an alternate red setting. They didn't have to change the bulb for that one, it just switches automatically. The ship's primary defensive systems were a very effective plasma armour, similar to the polarised hull plating of Star Trek's NX-01, but far more efficient.
The ship had a large mess hall where the ship's crew could gather to dine and relax, as this area also served an entertainment function by doubling as a bowling alley.
Nice. The ship's armoury was located on level C in hallway 5 on the Protector's main fuselage and was located across from this mess hall.
The main barracks, where the bulk of the Protector's officers and lower-ranked personnel spent most of their time, ran the entire length of the ship on each side of the main hull.
The bridge, or command deck, is where the Protector is controlled and commanded from. This was located at the very top of the ship. This is the primary location that the majority of the ship's command crew spend most of their time. Nearly all ship systems, including the Omega-13 device, were regulated and controlled from this point. The command deck included a command chair with a hand scanner, allowing for only authorised personnel to access vital systems, such as the Omega-13 activation button that was recessed into the chair were not required. A weapons station, a lieutenant station, ship's pilot controls, several computer displays, and the main view screen.
There was also a meeting room where the crew gathered to discuss present situations as well as other important ship subjects. It was in this room that court-martials and other functions such as peace summits could be conducted as well in a pinch.
The main engine room is located at the heart of the ship, containing the very important beryllium sphere, which supplied the ship's engine with power, as well as supplying energy for the rest of the ship's systems. There was also an emergency engine override room, where any engine self-destruct program or other harmful subroutines could be overridden.
Dr. Lazarus had a laboratory where he could conduct experiments and solve problems when his presence was not required on the main command deck. So next up is the cooling vent rooms. There are many of these rooms throughout the ship. They are large cylindrical rooms with huge cooling fans at their base and a small walkway across them. It is in one of these rooms that the Omega-13 device is housed.
It's not clear just how many digital conveyor rooms were located around the ship, but it is generally assumed to be at least 4. There was also a rec deck that the crew could relax and have some fun.
The Protector also had a large and functional shuttle bay / repair facility. It was at least 6 decks tall and comprised of 2 main levels of operation. Surface pods can be moved from storage racks into a launch area or repair bay.
Given the size of the bay, it's likely that Thermians also used another larger type of auxiliary craft besides the surface pods, as seen in the Galaxy Quest TV show, hence the larger size of the bay compared to the pods. We can see from the movie that at the very least there's a complement of 12 surface pods, but it looks as if they have enough space for at least 40.
Wow. Then, of course, there were the very important chompers. These were located deep at the center of the ship. The reason for their existence is a mystery, however. They were a set of hammering crushers that pound in sequence and have a flame wall that appears at the very end of that repeating sequence. It does seem, however, that they might have been part of the security system to prevent people from gaining access to the secondary engineering room. One false step and you would be crushed. It's only with the help of detailed knowledge of timings that the crew was able to survive this most impenetrable of security systems.
It's very effective, Yep.
Agreed.
Much like other ships from different franchises, this ship also came with the ability to separate in times of emergency. This separation involved the main command deck detaching itself, forming an independent vessel or escape craft. The main ship could then be controlled from a much smaller secondary bridge, just like the battle bridge from the Enterprise D. One interesting thing to note is this secondary command centre had no captain's chair and instead had the pilot in the centre of the room. This was likely a Thermion design as opposed to the main bridge, which of course replicated the Galaxy Quest TV show, hence the throne-like captain's chair, compared to the very functional Thermion design.
It's not known if the two halves could be reattached on their own or if they required a dock to reassemble them. But the main command deck craft did have a very capable propulsion system and was capable of landing or crashing on a planet's surface if need be.
Good at crashing. The standard control interface on board the Protector was similar to the LCARs on board Federation ships. They had touch interface controls as well as tactile buttons, and in the case of the helm console, physical joysticks-like controls to fly the ship, so Riker would feel right at home.
I like that. She was also equipped with a voice interface computer system. Unlike the amazing Majel Roddenberry, who voiced the computers in Star Trek, this was a male voice. And in an effort to recreate the show Galaxy Quest perfectly, the Thermians made it so that the computer would only recognize Lieutenant Madison. So she had to ask every question that the crew actually needed to get an answer to. A gimmick in the show, and in an otherwise serious scene in the movie, this provided some ridiculousness, which made the film so great. It's a terrible design, though. I mean, what if she died?
Then they'd be screwed. The Thermians also had advanced holographic technology. As we see in the film, they're able to transmit a deceptively real holographic signal of Lalari from a distant star system. It is likely they transmitted the signal through a relay on the other side of the black hole, used to get both the Interstellar Pods and the Protector at the end of the film back to Earth. But certainly some advanced technology, and despite not being seen in the Galaxy Quest TV show, it is very likely the Thermians would have included this system and this technology into the Protector.
The ship had a sensor or deflector dish mounted on the very front of the hull. This we can assume acted as a sensor system of some kind, and possibly even as a main deflector array, scattering particles of space debris out of the way of the ship when it was traveling at high speed.
And it's another callback to the Starfleet design. All the little bits are there, but in different places.
Yeah.
And now for some behind-the-scenes info. The ship was designed by legendary Galaxy Quest art director Jeff Z. Walters. It was extrapolated from advanced proposals for real-life NASA space technology. The Protector has been turned into toys, model kits, and even a best-selling air freshener. Okay.
Designing the NSEA Protector was a huge challenge for Jeff Walters. He came up with nearly 100 different ideas for the ship, but none of them satisfied the artistic eye of the series creator Frank Rose. Finally, during a friendly game of tennis, the frustrated Walters accidentally slammed his racket into the net post, shattering the upper part of the rim. He held up his broken racket, and to his shock, Rose looked at it and said, "That's it! That's our ship!" True story.
Yeah, kind of crazy, but it does make a lot of sense. I don't know. Bonus fact, the NTE from the registry number actually stands for Not the Enterprise. Very nice little
I love that little fact. Yeah. All right, so now it's time for the discussion part of the show. I'm going to start with what I like. This is a fantastic design, very reminiscent of the Sona ships that we see in Star Trek Insurrection, actually, shape-wise. It has a look and feel that could fit right in the Star Trek universe, however. The ship had a great feel, and it's something that I really, really enjoy. The story about how the design came about is one of my favorite things, actually. I love learning that. The way that people are inspired is really interesting. Besides that, of course, the Impulse-style engines that even have impulse crystals on top of them make the ship feel very Star Trek. I would love to see more of the ship and even see deck plans at some point. So overall, a great design and a nice homage to Star Trek. In my opinion, Galaxy Quest is a greater Star Trek movie than anything that J.J. Abrams did. I personally see JJ's movies as more of a parody than this is, for sure.
Well, a parody, but yeah, Galaxy Quest definitely a classic Trek film for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Beautiful ship. Although before we get into my likes and then our dislikes, I want to discuss a few points that didn't fit into the nature of the show format. So a couple of things. What did you think about the size of the bridge? We can see in the movie that it's capable of holding 28 crew members in a semicircle on the back half of the main deck, with plenty of room to spare. I mean, that they're not bunched up. They're not, well, they are, but not in a 3D where there's lots of extra space. She also seems to only have the one set of consoles on either wall, and you've got the dedicated console for each bridge officer, and then the release of the Omega 13 device at the front of the bridge. That is a lot of space for not a lot of stuff, and massive compared to any of the Star Trek bridges. So any thoughts on the bridge size?
Yeah, it's definitely a huge bridge. It's actually much bigger than almost anything we see in other sci-fi franchises at all. A lot of bridges are quite small in most of these sci-fi ships. This is actually even bigger than the Enterprise D's large hotel lobby style bridge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it almost feels to me like it's more of a stage production. In the theater, everything's so big. They fill up the whole stage with stuff. That's kind of what it looks like. So that's kind of, I think, the inspiration they were going for when they created that show. So
yeah, obviously it's based on the TV show, which we do see at the start, and if you actually look carefully, they have different controls. They have much more goofy controls, and the paint's all different. It looks I think it's more matte black or matte grey as opposed to silvery grey, whatever. And that's the nice difference. But they obviously, they just sort of threw stuff together because the control. I mean, it really is just those three big things in the center, and then just nothing. And 600 people. How do you even control everything? I mean, I know the E, might be able to fit 28 people in it in all different consoles, but not all actively doing stuff. I mean, you probably fit, 100 people, 200 people on that bridge if you really packed them in. Just physical space. And I thought Thermians wouldn't mind because they tend to, I don't know, it just seems very big. And,
no, I agree. And like I said, most sci-fi ships, there's very small bridges and command centers. This was a nice departure from that. It's interesting to see.
It kind of added to that goofy level. Just that sort of that it's not subtle per se, but it's a subconscious thing. You realise, wow, that's big, but that's part of the charm, So yeah. I also want to mention the engines. She has those two front glowing blue elements, which may be Bassard collectors, while the other two engines at the back look like they are both sublight and other drives. I don't know what you think if they are the Bassard and the engines, because it's kind of an odd layout.
I think maybe, although we can't. We're applying Star Trek technology to this ship. Doesn't mean that they collect any matter from space or whatever. Who knows?
Maybe rather than
it could just be to look cool.
Well, I mean, sure, but that's not our job here. Our job here is to really dissect it. Because we do see, I'll continue the next bit, I'll say. But I want to ask, do you think the ship actually has a FTL, faster than light drive? We see her pressing turbo, and everything sort of goes fast and whatever. But I don't know what to think if it's actually a faster than light drive. What's your take on this and its form of propulsion?
Well, like you said, it has the turbo, which is just a really high speed. I think it doesn't have a faster than light drive, would be my guess. I think creating those anomalies, black holes or wormholes or whatever it uses to travel, I think its method of long distance travel. It's probably a lot faster than even warp drive in Star Trek. So I think that its turbo is just like full impulse, maybe, just to get from one side of a solar system to another. I don't know. I just think that the artificial generator is what makes the ship go long distances.
I mean, we do see how, chilled and at ease. You're sending these little pods through a black hole. That certainly implies that the black hole is part of its, I'm not going to say standard operation, but that's something they deal with all the time. And if it doesn't have faster than light, you need a way of going between different star systems, unless obviously the entire situation of the movie happens in maybe 2 star systems, which is possible for sure, but you can't have a spacefaring race without faster than light of some sort. So creating anomalies, creating subspace vortices that something more.
With that being said, did the ship in the show perhaps have an FTL, but then the Thermians, they used more realistic technology to create these anomalies, and even the Interstellar Pods are more of a Thermian invention than actual from the show.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, a great example of this, and we talked about this pre-show, is the Dauntless from Star Trek. So you've got the overlayer of Federation tech, but underneath that you have the whatever the alien race is called tech was. So perhaps, the Thermians, obviously they are a far more advanced species than the NSEA human technology presented in the fictional show within the fictional movie. And so why would the Thermians wouldn't not incorporate their own advanced technology? So perhaps it's just, this is what they try to replicate. They have a fast seeming drive. Okay, let's build a really fast impulse drive, as you said. But then we obviously have our own types of propulsion underneath that. As you say, possibly some sort of artificial singularity, or even just some sort of transwarp style thing, or Vaudois conduit. So they're more using that big deflector, maybe front two glowing elements to create some sort of tunnel or vacuole or something to go into, as opposed to actually moving the ship faster.
Well, that being said, though, at the end of the movie, when the show is back on the air, you see the ship, and it does, I believe, it streaks off. So it might have some kind of faster than light drive.
But that's
in the show.
Fictional again.
I know. I'm just saying, because if we're basing it on the show, it's hard to say. Yeah,
I would assume based on the show, just the standard language, they would have faster than light, turbo. Mm-hmm. But what's what we see in the film version, that doesn't feel like it's actually going to a subspace layer or doing anything that dramatic. It just feels like it's moving a bit faster. I mean, you can't imagine that going turbo, you wouldn't. Well, it's kind of like Star Trek motion picture. You wouldn't think that to go between systems, that the entire time everything's blurry, everything's streaky, everyone's talking like that. Like, you can't be doing that for 12 hours a day while you're commuting places. So I don't think that's the effect of faster than light. It could be something close to Mass Effect, where they actually use alternating gravity fields using the Mass Effect. It's the name of the game. It lowers the gravity mass of a ship artificially, which means that the same amount of propulsion can push, an object far further. A 1-ton ship, but if you shrink it down to the weight of a phone or a wallet or something, I'm just looking at stuff I have next to me because I couldn't think of anything. Something that propulsion takes you far faster. So possibly something closer to that. But yeah, long discussion for Project FTL, but I think the Thermians, yes, included something else. And I want to circle back to when I said about the glowing elements at the back. We do see that the obviously the engines at the back of the ship, I theorize they're both FTL or at least turboing and sublight, because we do see when they say punch it, something escapes from that, but also those things turn on when the ship starts to move in dry dock, implying sublight. Plus, when they're damaged, they are half working and clearly providing the thrust. So I think there is a clever dual system.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't have separate warp or propulsion engines and impulse engines like Star Trek.
Yeah.
I think they're all in the one drive. So,
do you have any other discussion points, Stuart? I've left this open the script for you.
I don't actually. We've covered most of the stuff I want. The only thing I had is little handheld Vox communicators. I thought they were really cool. I just had to say that. I like the Vox communicators. I want one. I like the little.
And then I Star Trek reference with the Borg alcove thing. That's just
and their flip thing too. So yeah.
Okay, right. What I like about the design, I like it overall. She has a real elegance to her. I love the sweeping back nacelles, the primary hull, the color palette, the detailing, just the overall feel. I think she's one of the best of this style of clean and sleek science fiction ships. You obviously have the sexy rust buckets of Serenity and the Millennium Falcon, and then the more clean, classic ships like the Constitution class, the NSEA Protector, and Andromeda Ascendant. She's a beautiful and such a fun take on the Star Trek design, clearly an inspiration. I mean, every element is there, but taken in her own really unique direction. I think she works really well. When we actually wrote the script, Stuart had done all this amazing research. Because I love the ship so much, I sat down and really thought about each little detail of the film, and I just made new points just to really... It is one of the greats that deserve that extra little bit of treatment. I say that, and I was actually listening to the Galaxy Quest soundtrack when I was writing this very part, and I got that fantastic bit of music where I first saw the Protector in dry dock, and it was just like this welling of the script, and it was just perfect.
Yeah, dry dock moments are awesome for that in any franchise. And curse you! I did all my work, wrote the script, sent it to you, and then you add a whole bunch of stuff and make me think again. How dare you? Anyway, As for what I don't like, having to think again is one of them. But well, probably that we didn't see more of the ship. As I stated, it would make a great ship to see on a weekly basis for sure. Also, the fact that it doesn't have any red highlights might be a little disappointing to me initially. I think that the red glowing elements or pinstriping would have been a nice reference to Star Trek, which this movie is inspired by, obviously. But the decision not to use the red was likely to make it distinctly different from anything that Star Trek had, even not the Enterprise registry number. So it's actually kind of okay with me that there is no red on it. The colors are very similar to JJ Trek aesthetic, but having come out well before those movies, I think it's probably safe to say that if anything, this inspired the JJ Prize. And the JJ Prize used this as an inspiration for a number of its design, or at least color cues, which I really don't have a problem with on this ship. So
yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the JJ episode saying we don't like the sterile blue and white, but this ship pulls them off beautifully. Okay, as to what I don't like, right, let's have a think. I'm not the biggest fan of the deflector on the front of the ship. It's a bit tacked on. And that's it. Great ship.
Really? That's it?
Yep. I love it.
The size of the bridge. Does the size of the bridge not bother you?
Nope.
It's so big.
It's great.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anyways, that's it for this Fleetyards episode, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks to all of our supporters that contributed to make it possible.
Yeah.
Please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to check out our past Fleetyards episode. As well as Trekyards, the show that started it all. If you want to continue to see more Fleetyards, please consider heading over to our Patreon page and donating.
Our next episode of Fleetyards will be on the X-303, the Prometheus from Stargate. And I love Stargate. And I really want to see this episode happen. So please donate. That's the only way we can get this ship made, is if you guys support us. And remember, once we hit that $1,000 Patreon goal, this show, this amazing Fleetyards show, becomes a regular part of the channel. And we'll give all the ships the fantastic treatment we did, as we did right here on the NSEA Protector, which I'm looking forward to doing.
Absolutely. Or you can even, if you want to donate a one-time donation to help us out, go to Trekyards.com. That's Trekyards, not Fleetyards. So Trekyards.com, and click that donate button to send us a one-time donation. So that's a wrap, guys. I'm Captain Foley.
And I am Commander Cummings.
So until next time, to infinity and beyond. Oh, wait. Right guy, wrong movie. Sorry. Never give up. Never surrender. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.